In this episode of Monster Preservation and Research Society, we'll talk about 2 weeks of bloody terror that a North Carolina town suffered through in the 1950s. So, stick around. Bladenboro is a small community, surrounded by pine forests and swamps and located on the southeastern edge of North Carolina's Piedmont. It was the scene of 2 weeks of terror for its residents in the 1950s. The story begins in Bladen County in the town of Clarkton. On December 29, 1953, a local woman heard her neighbor's dogs barking and whimpering. When she went out to investigate, she saw a large, black and sleek, cat-like creature skulk off into the darkness. The next morning, the dog was found dead. On New Year's Eve, Bladenboro Police Chief Roy Forrs was called out to the farm of Woody Storm. Something large and powerful had killed 2 of Storm's dogs. The poor dogs' bodies had been drained of blood, completely torn to ribbons, and crushed. On January 1st, the bodies of 2 more dogs were discovered. These 2 had been drained of blood and mutilated. An eyewitness report said, "My dogs put up a good fight. There is blood all over the porch, big puddles of it. And there is a pool of saliva on the porch. They killed one dog at 10:30 and left it lying there. My dad wrapped the dog up in a blanket. That thing came back and got that dog, and nobody's seen it since. At 1:30 in the morning, it came back and killed the other dog and took it off. We found it 3 days later in a hedgerow. The top of one of the dog's heads was torn off, and its body was crushed and wet like it had been in that thing's mouth. The other dog's lower jaw was torn off." 2 more dogs were found dead on January 3rd, 1953. An autopsy was performed on one of the dogs, and it was reported that there wasn't more than 2 or 3 drops of blood in him. The victim's bottom lip had been broken open and the jawbone smashed back. As more reports started coming in, DG Pate said he watched from his service station as a dog was attacked by a large creature and dragged into the woods. Chief Forrs was overrun with reports of dogs being attacked from across the county. People said they saw an animal like a bear or a panther that was 3 feet long, 21 inches high, with a long tail and a cat's face. Others reported hearing the creature scream coming from the swamps near the town, saying it sounded like a woman with a knife stuck in her back. A team of professional hunters were brought in from Wilmington to track down the animal and kill it. The group of hunters from Wilmington spent the night tracking the creature for 3 miles around swampland. According to them, the track showed claws at least an inch long and indicated an 80 to 90 pound animal. The beast's circling movement suggested it might have had offspring or a mate nearby, the hunters said. On January 5th, the beast was witnessed attacking a dog which ran away and was not found. Tracks were seen along a creek bank near one of the attack sites. There were 2 sets of prints and one was smaller. Later that day, in the early evening, another resident described a big mountain lion near some dogs 3 houses down. The creature ran toward her, but turned and fled when she screamed. Outside her home, the tracks left in the dirt road were bigger than a silver dollar, according to Police Chief Forrs. A young boy named Dalton Norton reported seeing what he called a big cat on January 6, which made a noise like a baby crying on his porch before leaving. The next day, on January 7th, a dead dog was found in a pasture near the Bladenboro swamp. A goat was also reported to have died with its head flattened. Things seemed to quiet down for a few days, until January 11th. 2 cars stopped for an animal reported to be 4 feet long. One of the men in the cars was quoted as saying the animal had runty-looking ears and was brownish and tabby. Newspapers picked up the story, and soon Bladenboro was overwhelmed with hunters coming in, eager to bag the beast. Over 600 men from as far away as Tennessee descended on the town. Even a fully armed pack of fraternity brothers from UNC Chapel Hill made its way down to the town to see about putting the beast's head on the wall of their fraternity house. And, as a side note, this was also the time that former sideshow attraction, tattoo artist, and entrepreneur Dick the Half-Man Hilburn began selling license plates and other trinkets with the beast painted on them. Despite being born with no legs and only one arm, Dick had a genuinely remarkable career traveling with the circus. Hilburn had returned to his hometown of Bladenboro to become a sign painter, after tiring of constantly traveling with the sideshow. Hilburn was a much-loved member of the Bladenboro community. This remarkable man was known for endlessly entertaining children, doing tricks on a skateboard, and causing people to marvel at the seamlessly endless number of feats he could accomplish despite his disability. But no matter how vivid Hilburn's artwork was, no one knew exactly what they were hunting. Speculation began running rampant. Some thought that it was a Carolina panther, a species of large cat that was now thought to be extinct. Others said they were dealing with a large coyote or stray dog. Most of those who had descended on Bladen County thought the only way to find out for sure what the beast was would be by killing it. The town was terrified. As one local recalled, nighttime was the feared time around these parts. As the sun set, the entire community on the west side of town went indoors and didn't come out unless it was a necessity. Deciding that things were getting too dangerous because of overzealous hunters around, Bladenboro Mayor Bob Fussell and Chief Forbes called an end to the hunt. On January 13th, taking an unusually large bobcat that had been trapped by a local farmer, the two men hung it up a flagpole in the center of town. They posted a sign underneath stating, "This is the beast of Bladenboro." After a week or so, things settled back to normal. The hunters left town. The reports of killing stopped coming in. Whatever the beast of Bladenboro was, it had vanished back into the night and the swamps from where it first emerged. Or did it really vanish? Almost a year later, on December 15th, 1954, 5 medium-sized pigs and 3 chickens were found dead with crushed skulls. 3 of the pigs had legs torn apart from their bodies. Strangely enough, no blood was evident, indicating the killer employed the same blood-sucking traits as the Bladenboro beast. The next day, a stray dog was killed, which the county dog warden said was most probably the killer from the day before, even though the tracks found at the farm were not compared to the dead dogs, and it was not explained how the dog could reach the chickens, which were reportedly roosting in a tree. Today, there are still unsolved cases of missing family pets and livestock around Bladenboro, and when the bodies are recovered, they are drained of all blood and their bodies crushed. That was the tale of the beast of Bladenboro. Every year in Bladen County, they still hold a celebration to capitalize on their 15 minutes of fame. Some say Mayor Fussell created the whole thing in order to get attention on his small town. Either way, in 1953, something killed a lot of family pets, tore their bodies asunder, drained them of blood, and crushed their bodies. Now our next monster comes from Dungeons & Dragons and was created in 1974. One of the first monsters to ever grace the world of Dungeons & Dragons was the Shambling Mound. Its first appearance was in a TSR newsletter printed in 1975. That's 2 whole years before the famed Monster Manual would be released. The description of the beast was quite simple. It described it as an apparent heap of rotting vegetation, although in reality it was an intelligent form of vegetative life that suffocates its prey with its slime. To say the original art for the creature bears an uncanny resemblance to Marvel Comics' Man-Thing is fair. Man-Thing was first introduced in Savage Tales #1 in 1971, and Dungeons & Dragons was known to find inspiration in a wide variety of sources. This will not be the last time Marvel Comics appears in this monster's bio, but more on that later. Little has changed in the world of the Shambling Mound other than its looks. Taking the humanoid part of the creature to the next step, the second edition of Dungeons & Dragons went a little too human. The picture seen here is by far my favorite and gives the creature a more fey appearance. The picture appeared in the second edition monster manual, but right before that, the Shambling Mound made an appearance in the Monster's Compendium. Now, I feel the need to explain this to those that may not know. The Monster's Compendium was a 3-ring binder that you bought, and insert packs were released for it. At the end of the day, it ended up being very expensive and very large. Too large to carry in your weekend gaming backpack. Anyways, this version of the Shambling Mound was by far the most humanoid of them all. After this point, the Shambling Mound took on a more construct-like appearance. And yes, that is a man fighting for his life entangled within the back of a Shambling Mound. Even though a Shambling Mound is a plant, it can only survive off of the flesh and blood of living creatures. When the monster is first born or grown, it can live off of simple swamp animals such as fish, frogs, and rodents. But as it grows, so does its prey. Depending on the version of the Shambling Mound, it may crush its prey with monstrous strength, and trap it in its gooey body, or use its vines on its body to capture. Either way, the outcome is always the same. It will eat you. In 1982, LJN Toys made a great figure of the Shambling Mound. Albeit not very posable, it was still great to see one of these classic monsters turned into a toy. Heck, in 1981, the Shambling Mound even was in this awesome comic book ad for D&D. Green Slime also got a shout out. But one of the biggest shout-outs for the Shambling Mound was in the 1983 Dungeons & Dragons cartoon. In the episode Prison Without Walls, our heroes come across a Shambling Mound-like monster that was really a wizard trapped within an evil curse. The creature was a direct cross between a classic Shambling Mound and Marvel's Man-Thing. Here is where things get funny. The episode Prison Without Walls was written by Steve Gerber. Steve Gerber was an acclaimed writer for Marvel Comics in the 1970s and got his start working on Man-Thing. His most famous creation was Howard the Duck, and both characters shared stories together. After a dispute with Marvel over Howard the Duck, Gerber quit the comic and focused on writing cartoons throughout the 80s. His work has been hailed as some of the best, with his work on G.I. Joe being seen as the best of the series. Was this Gerber's way of returning to the comic where he got his start? Still today, the Shambling Mound is a feared monster of the swamps and Dungeons & Dragons, and that's the way it should be. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Monster Preservation and Research Society. We took a look at two very different creatures. One, a possible feline that feasted on canines in North Carolina in the 1950s, and one, a vegetative creature that feasted on adventurers in D&D. Either way, these are two great monsters that deserve to be preserved and researched. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them and I love getting back to everybody. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this or any of the episodes that YouTube is recommending down here, please hit subscribe. And if you hit that little bell icon, you'll be notified whenever there's a new episode. So until next time, thanks for watching. Keep being rad and stay dorky.